Hello and welcome to this Shipper Update. I'm Anthony Smith, Chief Economist here at FreightWaves, and we're going to talk about one of the big things that's really been updated over the last couple of weeks, and that's consumer conditions. This week, we're getting a lot of consumer data around the jobs market, and that's going to be really impactful for the type of momentum that we can expect to have on the consumer side. We're looking at consumer conditions. We're talking about things, not just inflation, which is going to be one of the main factors to really impact purchasing power, but we're also going to talk to the jobs market because those are going to be other areas. That's going to be a main area, I should say, that's going to really impact the purchasing power for a lot of consumers. We're looking at overall job openings that we covered yesterday. That's going to give the consumer a lot of mobility to have that optionality to move upwards in terms of wages. And so when we're looking at wage growth, that's going to be one of the main areas to really hit on. What I have behind me right here is going to be the Home Purchasing Sentiment Index. We're looking at an overall consumer outlook and conditions. There are many different indices that you can go to. You can go to consumer confidence, you can go to consumer sentiment, you can go to Home Purchasing Sentiment Index as well. This one's provided from our partnership with Fannie Mae. And when we're looking at consumer conditions, consumer outlook, consumer sentiment, consumer confidence, they're all going to vary in different indexes and different values. And so when we're looking at the Home Purchasing Sentiment Index, it has a reading of 75.3. A bit below where we were pre-pandemic, but there are some of the underlying trends that we have to look within them to see really what are some of the insights that we can glean from current consumer conditions. When we're looking at the consumer right now, there is a high expectation that interest rates are going to increase, like the open market Fed spot plots that you might be looking at as well. There's a high expectation that there's going to be an increase in interest rates, and with that, an increase in mortgage rates as well. And that's where some of this FOMO starts to set in for some of those consumers. And so typically with an increase in interest rates, you would expect that there's going to be a slowdown in purchases. And now that we're seeing that there is an increased expectation really building up at a pretty rapid clip, those consumers are having a fear of being able to lock in some of those lower rates now before they increase further in the future. And so that is going to really in turn pull some of those purchases forward that could lead to a little bit of unseasonable softness later on in the year that we won't really typically see some of the robust growth that we would have expected moving forward. There's also a lot of underlying trends and like these pull forwards, like the backlogs. These builders can't build these homes fast enough. There's still tons of homes that are still under construction that have yet to really be finished, or some homes that have even yet to be started. While we're looking at homes that have been authorized to be built, permits, things like that, looking forward in this next chart here, we can really start to see housing starts. Housing starts is going to be one of those indicators that you look to that's going to feed into flatbed trailer and things like that, but it also is going to have downstream impacts as well when you're looking at what goes into those new homes. So you're looking at refrigerators, we're looking at appliances, we're looking at electronics. Those are all going to be big ticket purchases that consumers are likely going to be making when they're looking at making these home purchases as well. Furniture, things like that. So that's going to be another area that's going to feed into the freight world as well. But when we're looking at the recent report for purchasing of durable goods, we saw that tick down, and we're also seeing volumes move down as well. So these are all going to be trends that we have to look at how they interlink with one another. Another area that big ticket purchase items really impact is going to be sales of motor vehicles. So looking at cars, trucks, things like that, they're also potentially going to be impacted as we continue to move forward throughout this, into the second quarter. So these are going to be rates to really kind of keep in mind when we're moving into that next quarter, because these are all going to be interlocked as we see what's going to happen with these consumers. Right now, like I said, there's going to be a lot of anticipation of those interest rates moving up, so a lot of pull forward is going to start to happen. So when we start to see a little bit of softening, it's not just going to be because of those ever increasing home prices, but also because maybe some of those purchases were pulled forward as well. In our next chart here, we're going to look at another interesting trend, and that's going to be the building permits. So permits is going to be one of those areas that precedes activity. As you can see, there was some downward movement, but still at a very high level for that U.S. permits. That's going to be, like I said, one of those areas that precedes housing starts. We're looking at overall starts. It's not just going to be things that have a foundation up on it, as well as siding, windows, things like that. It just means that there's ground has been broken. There's still going to be a slab that's going to need to put down. There's going to be foundation. There's going to be all these other things, and all those things that still need to come into the construction site. So that being said, there's going to still be a ton of activity for some of these flatbed trailers, in addition to some of the some of the manufacturing activity flowing upstream for those shippers that are going to be really tied into the home and purchasing or the home consumer market. This is going to be one of those areas that's really going to be a lot of momentum moving forward. But when you're looking at some of these traditional indices for some of that insight, there's going to be some of those variations that you have to take into account. That's going to do it for this shipper update. But right now we have On the Spot with Tony Mulvey coming right up.